1952. Harry Truman is president, the Korean War is raging, and Boeing is about to unveil a bomber so advanced, so ahead of its time, that it would still be flying combat missions 70 years later. Your grandfather could have worked on this aircraft, your father could have flown it. And if you join the Air Force today, you might too. Because the B-52 Stratofortress isn't just still in service, it's expected to keep flying until 2050. That means this aircraft will have served for nearly a century. 3 generations of pilots, from the Cold War to the War on Terror to whatever comes next. How is that even possible? Let me take you back to October 1948. A group of Boeing engineers are sitting in a hotel room in Dayton, Ohio. They're surrounded by coffee cups, ashtrays, and crumpled paper. They've been working for 3 days straight, barely sleeping. The Pentagon wants a new strategic bomber. But here's the problem: Boeing's original design is a disaster. It's essentially a propeller-driven aircraft with jet engines slapped on. It's slow, outdated before it even exists, and the Air Force brass are minutes away from canceling the entire project. These engineers have one weekend to save everything, so they do something crazy. They throw out months of work and start completely from scratch. For 72 hours, they redesign the entire aircraft. They're sketching on hotel stationery, calculating performance figures on the back of napkins, building a wooden model from balsa wood they bought at a hobby shop. On Monday morning, they walk into that meeting with something revolutionary, an old-jet, swept-wing heavy bomber that could fly higher, faster, and farther than anything America had ever built. The Air Force officers lean forward in their chairs. This is it. This is what they need. By the afternoon, Boeing had a handshake deal for what would become the most important military aircraft in American history. But they had no idea what they'd actually created. They thought they were building a bomber for the 1950s. What they built was a bomber for the next 100 years. When the first B-52 took flight in April 1952, it didn't just push boundaries, it obliterated them. 8 jet engines, that's not a typo. 8 Pratt & Whitney turbojets mounted in 4 pods beneath those massive wings. Together, they produced enough thrust to hurl 185,000 pounds of aircraft, fuel, and weapons into the sky. The wingspan, 185 feet, longer than the Wright brothers' entire first flight. Those wings are so long and heavy that when the B-52 sits on the ground, the tips actually droop nearly 6 feet. Engineers had to install small wheels at the ends just to keep them from scraping the runway. But here's where it gets interesting. Those wings, they're flexible. In flight, they can bend upward by as much as 35 feet from root to tip. Watch footage of a B-52 taking off, and you'll see those wings actually flapping like a massive metal bird. It's unsettling if you don't know it's supposed to do that. The fuselage is long and slender, a cigar tube of aluminum designed to slip through the air with minimal drag. The landing gear is bicycle style, mounted along the center line, with outrigger wheels near the wing tips for balance. The entire gear assembly can actually pivot to account for crosswinds, allowing the B-52 to essentially land sideways in a storm. And the bomb bay, it's 28 feet long. That's enough space to carry 70,000 pounds of conventional or nuclear weapons. In the Cold War, a single B-52 could carry enough firepower to level multiple cities. Today, it can carry enough precision-guided munitions to obliterate an entire enemy battalion without collateral damage. But raw capability isn't why this aircraft has lasted so long, it's the genius of the design itself. The B-52 was over-engineered in all the right ways. The airframe was built stronger than it needed to be. The systems were designed with redundancy. The structure could handle stresses far beyond normal operations. And critically, it was designed to be modified. That last part is the secret. The B-52 isn't just one aircraft, it's a platform. A flying chassis that can be continuously upgraded as technology advances. Now let's talk about what this aircraft was really built for, the unthinkable. In the 1960s, at the height of the Cold War, America lived under the constant shadow of nuclear annihilation. Soviet ICBMs could reach American cities in 30 minutes. There would be no time to scramble bombers after an attack began. The bombers had to already be in the air. Enter Operation Chrome Dome. Around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, B-52s loaded with thermonuclear weapons circled the globe. They flew predetermined routes just outside Soviet airspace, always ready, always watching, always carrying enough firepower to trigger Armageddon. The crews called it airborne alert. It was the most boring and terrifying job in military aviation. Hours of monotonous flying punctuated by the knowledge that if you ever received the go code, you'd be starting World War III. Imagine being one of those pilots. You're 35,000 feet over the Arctic Circle, 8 hours into a 12-hour patrol. Your co-pilot is fighting to stay awake. The navigator is rechecking calculations he's already checked 5 times. Behind you, in the weapons bay, are hydrogen bombs with yields measured in megatons. Your radio crackles. You receive an emergency action message. Your blood turns to ice. You and your co-pilot pull out sealed authentication documents, cross-checking the codes. Everyone on the crew goes silent, their training taking over even as their minds are screaming. Then the second message arrives: stand down, false alarm. Return to patrol pattern, you exhale. But you know this drill will happen again. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe in an hour. And one day. Maybe it won't be a drill. That was the reality for B-52 crews throughout the Cold War. They were the third leg of America's nuclear triad, the insurance policy against Soviet aggression. The message was clear: if you strike us, our bombers are already in position to strike back. But the Cold War ended, the Soviet Union collapsed. And most people assumed the B-52 would be retired, a relic of a bygone era. They were catastrophically wrong. Here's what makes the B-52 truly remarkable: it refused to become obsolete. When the Cold War ended, the Air Force could have mothballed the fleet. Instead, they did something brilliant: they transformed it. The B-52 went from being a nuclear bomber to becoming the most versatile strike platform in the American arsenal. New wings, new engines, new radar, new avionics, new weapons systems. The only thing that stayed the same was that iconic silhouette. In the 1991 Gulf War, B-52s flew from Louisiana to Iraq, dropped their bombs, and returned home missions lasting 35 hours. The Iraqi army had never experienced anything like it. Carpet bombing from an altitude they couldn't reach, by aircraft they couldn't see, carrying more ordnance than an entire World War II bombing raid. In Afghanistan, B-52s became close air support platforms, loitering above battlefields for hours, providing precision strikes for troops in contact. Special Forces teams on the ground would call in coordinates, and minutes later, 2,000-pound bombs would obliterate Taliban positions with surgical accuracy. In Syria, in Iraq, in operations across the globe, the B-52 adapted. It became a truck bomb delivery system, a communications relay, a show of force, a diplomatic statement. When America wanted to send a message without saying a word, they sent a B-52. But here is the thing that keeps me up at night: the newest B-52 rolled off the production line in 1962. These aircraft are older than their pilots' grandparents. The maintenance crews are working on planes built before the Kennedy assassination, and yet they keep flying. Through upgrades, through modifications, through sheer engineering brilliance and the dedication of thousands of maintainers who refuse to let these birds die. Let me tell you about something the specifications don't capture: what it's actually like inside one of these things. The B-52 crew consists of 5 people. 2 pilots in the cockpit upstairs, a radar navigator and navigator in the windowless compartment below, and an electronic warfare officer who manages the defensive systems, that windowless compartment. Imagine sitting in a metal box for 12 hours, watching screens, making calculations, knowing that if anything goes wrong, you're in the belly of the beast with no view of the outside world. It takes a special kind of person to do that job. The cockpit itself is a time capsule. Yes, they've upgraded the displays, the navigation systems, the communications. But walk into a B-52 cockpit and you're still seeing steam gauges, mechanical switches, and technology that would look familiar to pilots from the Vietnam era. It works, it's proven, so why change it? The pilots sit side by side, not tandem like modern fighters. It's almost intimate in a strange way. You're shoulder to shoulder with your co-pilot for the entire mission. You eat together, you work together, you handle emergencies together. The trust required is absolute, and the noise, oh, the noise. 8 jet engines produce a sound that doesn't just reach your ears, it vibrates through your entire body. It's a physical presence, a constant reminder that you're strapped to 185,000 pounds of aluminum and explosive power. But here's what gets me: multi-generational crews. There are documented cases of grandfathers, fathers, and sons all serving on B-52s, 3 generations of the same family flying the same type of aircraft. Can you imagine that? Your grandfather's war stories aren't ancient history, they're an instruction manual for your own career. One pilot I read about found his father's name carved into a panel during a pre-flight inspection. His dad had flown that exact aircraft during Operation Desert Storm. Now, 30 years later, the son was about to fly it over Syria. That's not just history, that's legacy written in scratched metal and jet fuel. Now here's where things get really wild. The Air Force just announced a re-engining program for the B-52 fleet. They're replacing those 8 old turbojets with new Rolls-Royce engines. The cost, billions of dollars. The timeline: deployment starting in 2030. The expected service life extension through 2050 and possibly beyond. Think about that. The Air Force is investing billions to upgrade bombers that first flew when Stalin was still alive. They're planning for these aircraft to remain combat capable until 2050, potentially until 2060 or later. That means a B-52 could theoretically fly for 110 years. No other military aircraft has ever achieved anything close to that service life. Fighters last maybe 30 years. Even the legendary C-130 Hercules, remarkable for its longevity, isn't approaching B-52 numbers. Why? What makes the B-52 so special that it's outlasted every aircraft designed to replace it? The B-1 Lancer was supposed to replace it faster, sleeker, more advanced. But the B-1 is already being phased out due to maintenance nightmares. The B-2 Spirit was supposed to replace its stealth technology, cutting-edge design. But we only built 21 of them, and they're hideously expensive to operate. The new B-21 Raider is supposed to replace it, and maybe it will someday, eventually, but right now the B-52 just keeps flying. It's like that old truck your grandfather has sitting in his driveway. It's not pretty, it's not fast, but it starts every single time you turn the key, and it hauls whatever you need hauled. No complaints, no drama. The B-52 is the institutional knowledge of American strategic bombing made physical. Every upgrade, every modification, every lesson learned over 7 decades is built into these aircraft. You can't just replicate that. You can't download 70 years of operational experience into a new design. And there's something else: deterrence. When a B-52 flies over international waters near a contested territory, everyone knows what it means. It's a statement that transcends words. It's the physical manifestation of American power projection backed by 7 decades of proven capability. The B-52 has accumulated mythology over the decades. Some of it's true, some of it's exaggerated. Let me separate fact from fiction. Myth: B-52s can fly for days without landing. Reality: the longest combat missions have been around 35 hours with aerial refueling. That's still insane, but not infinite. Myth: the B-52 can carry any weapon in the American arsenal. Reality: it can carry an astonishing variety, but it has limitations. The latest hypersonic weapons don't fit in the old bomb bays without external pylons. Myth: B-52s are invincible. Reality: 31 B-52s were shot down over Vietnam, mostly by surface-to-air missiles. The aircraft is tough, but not invulnerable. But here is a fact that sounds like myth. A B-52 once lost its entire vertical stabilizer, the entire tail fin, and still managed to fly for 90 minutes before making an emergency landing. The crew used asymmetric thrust and differential power to maintain control. Try that in a modern fly-by-wire aircraft that would instantly declare itself unflyable. Another fact: during Operation Linebacker II in 1972, B-52s flew through the most concentrated anti-aircraft fire in history. Surface-to-air missiles rose like fireworks, MiG fighters swarmed. And the B-52s kept coming, night after night, until North Vietnam agreed to negotiate. And one more: there is a B-52 on display at the Air Force Museum that flew 15,000 hours. That's 625 days of continuous flight time, nearly 2 years in the air, spread across decades of missions. The airframe is still structurally sound. These aren't superpowers. They're just the result of brilliant engineering, constant maintenance, and the dedication of tens of thousands of people who've kept these birds flying across 7 decades. But let's not romanticize war machines. The B-52 has a complicated legacy. In Vietnam, B-52 strikes killed countless civilians alongside military targets. The term carpet bombing became synonymous with indiscriminate destruction. Entire villages disappeared under waves of high explosive. The psychological impact on populations living under the threat of B-52 raids was profound and lasting. During the Gulf War, some precision strikes weren't so precise. Buildings that were supposed to be empty weren't. Intelligence that was supposed to be solid wasn't. This is the reality of strategic bombing. The B-52 is a tool, and like all tools, it reflects the intentions of those who wield it. Used precisely with good intelligence, it can eliminate threats while minimizing casualties. Used broadly or with faulty intelligence, it becomes something darker. The crews themselves wrestle with this. They're professionals executing lawful orders in service of national defense. But they're also human beings who understand the consequences of their actions. That's a burden they carry every single flight. So here we are, 73 years after that first flight, staring at the most improbable military success story in aviation history. The B-52 Stratofortress wasn't supposed to last this long. It was designed in a panic, built for a war that never came, and somehow became the backbone of American air power across 8 decades of actual conflicts. It's flown through the Cold War, the Gulf War, the War on Terror, and everything in between. It's dropped more bombs than any other aircraft in history. It's been upgraded, modified, and transformed so many times that the only original parts are the basic airframe and that unmistakable silhouette. And it's still not done. Right now, somewhere over the Pacific or the Middle East or the Arctic, a B-52 is on patrol. The crew inside is probably a quarter of the age of the aircraft they're flying. They're executing the same mission their grandfathers flew, in the same basic design, carrying the same burden of deterrence. By 2050, the B-52 will have served for nearly a century. It will have outlasted the Soviet Union, outlasted the Cold War, outlasted every conflict and crisis of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. It will have been flown by 3, possibly for generations of American air crews. That's not just longevity, that's immortality. The B-52 isn't just a bomber anymore. It's a monument to engineering excellence, operational flexibility, and the people who refuse to let it die. It's proof that sometimes, very rarely, we get the design so fundamentally right that it transcends its era and becomes timeless. Will it really fly until 2050? Until 2060? I don't know. But I've learned to never bet against the Stratofortress. It's been defying predictions for 7 decades. Why stop now? If this story fascinated you, hit that subscribe button. We dive deep into military history and technology that shaped our world. Drop a comment. Do you think the B-52 will actually make it to 2050? Or will something finally replace it? Let's discuss.